This episode of the Answer is Yes Baja Sessions is brought to you by Baja Bound Insurance Services. Driving to Mexico? You can buy and print out your Mexican auto insurance policy online in minutes with their easy-to-use website. They also have great travel information to help you plan your trip south of the border. Visit bajabound.com.
Hello, this is Ryan Thomas, and you're listening to the Baja Sessions. Over the last 3 decades, I've lived, worked, and played from the top to the tip of the majestic peninsula of Baja California. And because of this, I've met some incredibly interesting people with equally interesting stories. And today on the Baja Sessions, we're going to chat with one of them. Derrik Chin is the founder and operator of Turista Libre, a tour company dedicated to sharing the magic of Tijuana, an often misunderstood border town. His clients are usually adventurous, open-minded individuals interested in a true cultural experience rather than just another run-of-the-mill tour. He's from Cincinnati, and shortly after graduating with a degree in journalism from Ohio State, he moved to San Diego and got a job for a local newspaper, where it took less than a year for Derrik to hear the call of Baja. He responded by moving across the border, and as of today, Tijuana has been his home for over a decade. I have to say this has been one of my most favorite interviews to date. Join us today as we learn that Tijuana is much more than just the crazy border town that you have to drive through to get to the rest of Baja. Derrik, I'm stoked to have you here. I got to tell you, I stumbled across something about Turista Libre back several years ago, and I thought, man, what a cool concept. And I can't believe you're actually sitting here in front of me today in the conference room. So welcome.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm happy to be here.
So like I said, I somehow bumped into your website or a video about your business several years ago and just was enamored with the whole concept. And I'm going to let you do the intro as to what Turista Libre is.
Okay.
And but then I'm going to interrupt you on points too. And the first thing I want to point out is you are born and raised in Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yes, sir.
And shortly after you graduated from college, is that right?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Cincinnati and then went to Ohio State.
Okay.
Yeah. And then after Ohio State, moved out west.
All right, so you can take it up from there.
All
you
right.
moved out west and came to San Diego,
Yes.
and the rest is history, as they say.
Or it's happening right now, yeah?
Yeah.
But you stop me whenever you're ready to interrupt, okay? Love being
Okay.
interrupted. So Turista Libre has been around for 10 years now. This year is our 10th anniversary. And much like the name says, Turista Libre means free tourist, but not free in the monetary sense, more so in the like a liberated sense. And the idea is we've started in Tijuana in 2009. Tijuana's been my home for 12 years now. So the idea is to show foreigners or Mexicans too, anyone who would like to come, a more or a closer approximation to what it's like to be a local in a place like Tijuana. These days we offer regional trips as well to Ensenada, to Mexicali, to Tecate, and then 2 years ago we also started trips in Mexico City. So we're continuing to grow, but it's essentially cultural experiences that would be more fitted for a native or for a local. So the idea is to basically free you from that stigma of being a tourist in a place like Tijuana, which I think is really important because, ironically, Tijuana became a tourist destination in the 1920s during Prohibition, when alcohol was illegal in the United States. So that was essentially when a lot of border cities started to really become a popular place, not just along the Mexico border, also the Canadian border as well. But it's because of that, now more than 100 years later, it's a very, very, very unique, very eclectic, very diverse place, but also I think one of the most misunderstood places in the world. So our idea is to basically allow folks, outsiders, to feel more like insiders to the point where they feel comfortable enough to come back and do their own thing, but, with a bit of knowledge and I would hope class as well. With a bit more like, okay, they read the manual, they got the manual. So, people they've compared the experiences that we offer. It's more than just a tour. I know tour is a 4-letter word.
It's so true.
But it's more than a tour. It's like a micro exchange experience that basically allows you to see the inside of a place that maybe wouldn't be a possibility. So, yeah.
So there's two words that have popped out in this first little exchange between us. The first one is our, O-U-R.
Oh, okay.
And I'm catching on that because my first introduction to you and your business was at a time when I believe it was kind of just you. And through our conversation earlier, I've learned that what was in the beginning kind of a hobby and or maybe that's the best way to put it, a hobby, this has turned into actually your full-time form of supporting yourself, for lack of better words, and it has now gone from me and what I'm doing to our and what your group is doing. Tell us a little bit about the business. And then I do want to get into really more of what you do and why you do it, but understanding the foundation of what you've got today, I think, is kind of important for moving forward.
Sure. I think it's a habit that I speak in third person. And I also do it because I think I'm just not speaking for myself. I am 95% of the entire operation. We do have secondary guides these days in Tijuana, and then also drivers that help as well with our Tijuana and our Baja trips. But we also have guides in Mexico City as well. So we're a team these days. It's a small team, but we're a team. But I think I speak in third person also because when I say our, I also refer to everyone who's ever come on one of our trips or treks or experiences. They also count as part of the family because it really is. I think one of the things that I'm constantly or continuously hearing from folks is that they compare it to, like Derrik, I just met you today, but I feel like I'm seeing this city with a friend that I haven't seen in like 10 years, So it's
what an awesome experience to be able to provide for people.
It is really cool, and like it's something that I never expected to do. I have a background in journalism, and I was working as a journalist in San Diego before starting doing this, and I had been living in Tijuana for 2 years beforehand, and was having a really hard time kind of sharing this newfound love for a place, like I said earlier, is very misunderstood, I think. Trying to break down that stigma and use my privilege or my ability to be a journalist. I was an entertainment reporter for the Union Tribune from 2006 to 2010, and basically was covering arts, culture, food, nightlife on both sides of the border. I wanted to be on both sides of the border as much as possible. But I realized, I could write my hand off trying to change or provide a more balanced view of what's happening on the other sides of the border. But there's nothing like just giving a person the chance to come and live the story for themselves, and they can make their own decision based on that. So instead of me writing about a new restaurant, let's take you there and you try it yourself. And it's not just the food you're eating; it's the entire experience, from the moment you lock your car or the moment you step off the trolley in San Isidro, to when you get back. So it's a small team, like I was saying earlier, and yeah. Once you come, you're part of the family. So when I say our, I'm referring to everyone who's ever been there. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to back up. You're from Ohio.
Yeah.
You moved to San Diego, and you alluded to the fact earlier that San Diego was, in the beginning, the ultimate destination, but you realized quickly that, hey, I studied Spanish when I was in junior high or high school or something, and Mexico's just not too far away, so I'm going to go check out Mexico. But anyways, you leave Ohio and you come to San Diego, and then shortly after that, you move to Tijuana. What is your family saying?
That's a good question. I like you said, I grew up in Cincinnati. I went to Ohio State. I moved out west after finishing my undergrad. I studied journalism and also Japanese. I was an exchange student in Japan in high school. So my plan was basically I had such a wonderful experience there that I wanted to come back and basically, make that my profession. My plan was to move back to Japan after university and work there as a journalist. There's several English language newspapers over there. So that was the plan. And just, like after finishing school, like we all know what that, or some of us know, I like you and I might know like what it feels like when you're 24. You're like, the world is a different place when you're 24. So for me, I was like, okay, the opportunity to move to San Diego came up, and I thought it's on the way to Japan, technically, from Ohio. So, but I never expected to be doing what I'm doing now. I will say that looking at a map of San Diego, I'd never been to the city before. I'd never been to Southern California before. But looking at a map of the city and seeing that its southern border was Mexico was very fascinating. And ever since I was a little, like, I could have been, 10 years old, I think, and just fascinated with languages. Lots of kids are like, fantasizing about being race car drivers or doctors or whatever, but I wanted to be bilingual. That was my thing as a kid. And growing up in suburban Ohio in the 80s was not really going to be a possibility for me. They started a pilot program for Spanish in my 7th grade class. So I took it. That was my favorite subject. And I took it all through high school as well. So I've always loved languages, and I think the more we learn about other cultures and whatnot, we learn more about ourselves. And so just like the desire, the fantasy, the dream to become bilingual or multilingual was something that really pushed me to explore this border region more and to kind of, just drop myself over there,
So did you, and I could be traveling into territory that you don't want to talk about, so tell me if that's the case, but I go back to your family just because I tell people from other parts of the country that, and I didn't share this with you earlier, but my prom night, which was here in San Diego, we gathered up a group of friends and we found a limousine company that would rent limousines that would cross the border. And we actually went to Rosarito. Actually, we went to Puerto Nuevo and had lobster dinners before we came back across the border to go to our prom.
Wow.
And people that are, even people from San Diego hear that, like, are you kidding me? So for whatever reason, and I got a 5-year-old son, and I don't know if I would let him cross the border in a limousine to go to Rosarito.
Of course not. But
so my point is that, like, I'm coming from the standpoint of that's the kind of stuff that I did when I was growing up living in San Diego. And I know the response that I get from people when I share that story. So again, back to your parents or your family, like you moved to San Diego, and then the next thing you know, you're living in Tijuana. What kind of response? And this is a leading question because let's face it, we understand that Tijuana, part of the reason you started your business is because of the stigma that exists around Tijuana, and your desire to change that or to share the real Tijuana with people that are interested in knowing. So we're on the same page there, but I got to believe you stumbled into some resistance at some point early on.
No, I'm very thankful for my parents, and they might not necessarily always understand the things that I do, but they always respect what I do.
Well, that's an awesome part of it then.
Yeah, and I'm very thankful for that. I think the fact that I was permitted to go to a place like Japan when I was 16, and it wasn't something that I was just given. I worked for it.
Sure.
I sold my car. I worked part-time jobs. Yeah, and so the fact even that I did all of that, they still would have had the option as my parents to say, no, you're not going, but they let me go, and that's a big thing, I'm not a parent, you are, so you have, please butt in here, but to allow your child to basically go to the other side of the world and be in the home of strangers is, not the easiest thing, and I didn't speak Japanese when I went at all, so it was also a lot of hopes and prayers and best wishes going on there, I'm sure. So I think having said that with my parents at an early age, and I think they, we were from a working class family. My dad was a mechanic. My mom was a school bus driver. I think that they recognized this passion in me to want to speak as many languages as I could, but they just didn't have the ability to give that to me when it comes to like schooling or whatnot. Public school was all we had. So what they could give me is their respect and their blessing. And that's really special. And I've actually never really thought about it that way until right now. So this is nice.
All right, good. We can finish this and you can call your parents and thank them, hopefully, that they're still alive.
Totally. They are, yeah. Yeah, my dad, his birthday was yesterday. So
right on.
Yeah. Anyway.
So let's steer this back to Turista Libre.
Yes, yeah.
And it's so funny because having grown up in San Diego, we've got all these Spanish-named, San Diego, El Cajon, all of these Spanish-named areas. There is definitely a Spanish influence on the city of San Diego, for lack of better words. And I went to an elementary school, Casa de Oro.
Okay.
But we didn't call it Casa de Oro. We called it Casa de Oro.
Of course. Yeah.
And so it's this struggle for me when I'm back in my hometown after living in Baja, saying the Spanish words of the local towns that or anything that were referencing. So sometimes I say Tijuana,